in general, we have a general theme of nine-centered relating. And of course, I'm always looking at the transits, and relationships are on the ticket right now. Venus is opposing Pluto and will be for the next few days. And that has very deep, significant relation to relationships, being Venus. And so we might talk about that. And we also have this Mars-Uranus conjunction taking place early Monday morning. So we're definitely already in the building of energy of that very powerful conjunction. One of the biggest aspects of the year for sure. That's taking place in gate 8, line 2. And so that could be part of our discussion.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to just pour in just to hear Rachel's frequency and maybe Nancy's frequency, if you feel to share before we open and start our conversation, just so I always imagine these rooms like we're sitting around a fire, all on our wooden stumps. And for us all to arrive here is to bring in our frequency. And so I just want to recognize Rachel and Nancy. And Shane going now. Thank you for being here. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, everyone. So yeah, thank you, Richard, for reminding me about that astrology. I was just thinking how I saw on my computer today, I looked at the chart of the moment, and I saw Venus had entered into Leo and was opposing Pluto, and I was like, oh. And then when you just reminded me also about the Mars applying to Uranus, I think I've been trying to block that out. But it's in Taurus, so it's being ruled by this Venus Pluto opposition. So it's a really and then of course by whole sign those energies are square to each other, but because it's such a late degree Taurus energy, it's almost like a trine. It's this I have to look into this further to see, but I always think that's so interesting when it's on those cusps of like by whole sign it's a square, but so yeah, I'm just contemplating that in the relationship zone context, how, and then the first thing when I was just thinking of the isolated Venus Pluto opposition, like the main keyword I always go to, the single keyword I go to for Venus in HD is values and Pluto is truth. So it's like when we're not, an opposition is a no. And so it's like, are our values in line with our truth? No. Oh, that's going to come up, and then that's all for now for me.
Well, I concur with your keynoting. Absolutely. Values is a great one word for Venus. But also, I always like to add to them because sometimes it just helps gets more of the frequency. Venus being love, harmony, passion. Really, it's what we want. Venus is what we want. And it is, the idea of being values. We want our values, to be expressed, but it really has this relationship to this passion, this loving passion, higher frequency passion of what we want.
Yeah.
And truth for sure, with Pluto, with true. And it's usually truths that we're not aware of yet. That's why Pluto brings that element of mining the gems and minerals in our soul. And that's Pluto's territory as the ruler of the underworld. And so we may have opportunities or instances that appear that are challenging us in that way. Pluto doesn't normally bring fluffy experiences.
Yeah.
They're usually a little dark and cold sometimes. Could be an altercation or a misunderstanding or just getting the wires crossed.
And it sounds like it is the opportunity to, like Rachel was saying, look at how we operate within our value system in relationships, how and what values, and are they still outdated? I think that's something that with this your Uranian Mars something, the fact that Uranus rotates on the other, just the completely different way. So it's like, what can be different? What have we been calling our values, our morals, our things that we stand on in a relationship? And Pluto being this gems, this underworld, kind of makes me think of what are the values and behaviors that you have not brought to the surface yet because you're afraid, or because we are not sure, because they're so different, because they go against the grain of who you've always been. What things can come to the surface? And then it feels like Mars being like, dun, 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 okay, I gotcha. Here are these new things, and we're going to go get that or do that or be that. It feels like not just a reevaluation, but something you said made me think of the crack, right? Not just reevaluating what's already there, but having that crack show us what else can come to the table in terms of relating. What can we, for me, I'm going to talk about me. What was I afraid of in relationships? What did I think could never happen? What have I been like, yeah, that would be great to have this and to be this and to bring this into my heart and home, but maybe I'm not worthy of that. Maybe I'm not ready for that. Maybe I really don't want that. So really seeing what it is that I really do value, and being able to be strong enough with Mars to make the shift like Uranus.
I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Mechanically, the significance of Venus-Pluto opposition versus conjunction is if they're in the same gate and they're together, they're walking together. When they are in opposition, they are walking towards each other and something has to give. That's simple, right?
Yeah, I mean, I often think of an opposition as more of a, it's almost like a tug of war, and we're in the middle. And so the idea with, like, if you have an opposition in your natal chart, what tends to happen is we look one way or the other and we lose the other. So it involves a lot of projection. So that's why if we encounter any relationship altercation type energy, we tend to project it on the other person. So, but the idea with opposition is we want to find the balance in the middle, to be able to look straight ahead and still be aware of both sides of the story. So that's why it's considered a hard aspect, because it's very tenuous to try to relax our vision and actually see two opposing viewpoints.
And find the quantum in the middle. Yeah.
So it has a lot to do with disassociation or projection. It's not me, it's you kind of thing. So with this transit we're talking about, Mars-Uranus, it would tend to have, if there was a relationship that was on shaky ground, something all of a sudden may happen to say, okay, it's over. Like it'll bring the finality to the situation. Or the relationship could seem just as fraught with difficulties, and also it could get a shift in the right direction. It's not a Uranus, we just simply don't know. It's the wild card in the card game. It changes the game. I mean, we were all playing one strategy, and all of a sudden the wild card comes out and you got to completely change your strategy. Not our personal strategy, but I mean that's the image of Uranus, is that it's absolutely shocking and out of nowhere. Things were heading one way and all of a sudden it's going the other way. So in the one sense, we certainly can't predict anything. I don't think we can with any of these transits, but there is this element of surprise in the air, and to be open to that, to be receptive, I think, to that.
Yeah, to something new that is for the benefit of your expression of your purpose in relationships, or as 8.2.
Yeah, which is the line of service.
The contribution, how do you show up as yourself in these spaces? So allowing yourself, that's where I got that thinking that it was about, the crevice of opening a new possibility in the way I serve and relate in my relationships.
Well, and I think we really see that in the transit, because the Mars-Uranus conjunction is in gate 8 and the channel of inspiration and individual circuitry. It's contribution of individual inspiration to larger group goals. And the Venus is in that opposition, has just moved into Leo, which is also about self-creativity and self-confidence. And so, yes, in that, as you're describing, I think it could have that element where it's a higher expression of yourself within the relationship.
Right.
And whether or not the other person is ready for that as well.
Right. And whether or not I'm ready for it. I feel like it's Mars is giving me the fire to say, okay, I am ready for it. I can do this. I can be of service or in relationship, or I can behave in this way. I can be this. My contribution is valuable. It feels very personal. I mean, I know it's about relationships, right? But we only know each other through the mirror of the other, and you are just a mirror, not just your beautiful mirror, but you are a mirror of what is happening and how I am behaving in the world. So yeah. I think that now I love this topic and I do want to talk about it, and we'll pick that up as soon as we're done talking about this one, because I love the Russian doll effect of the masculine and feminine that the body graph just shows so beautifully. Yeah. I mean, maybe we can try to do you have any more to share on this? You have a lot more to share. There's been a lot alive in you about this transit. Do you want to share some more?
Well, I think the only thing to add, and you all have been hearing me say this, these lunar cycles, the overriding transits have been all individual. I mean, again, we just had a new moon last week, almost a week ago. The first quarter moon is going to be Saturday, and it was in gate 39. So every lunar cycle has been really individual. So having this in gate 8 again is going to stimulate all those gates. So it's just another good contemplation, I think, for the weekend at the first quarter moon, which is the most dynamic energy of the cycle. So having this conjunction within 24 hours of the first quarter moon, tremendous energy to evolve, to move forward, whatever this Venus opposition is bringing up in terms of our values, our personal integrity and passion, of how we find hidden truths within relationships. There's really just makes me want to emphasize this acceptance and surrender to it, because it's not what we're looking for, it's not going to be what we think we're going to get.
Right.
That's the only thing we can say. Like, if we're looking for something in the relationship that's going to go my way, kind of thing, we're off track. Right. But it is there to support us. So I think surrendering and being accepting of whatever comes up, that we'll deal with it. But it will bring something will be illuminated. And the first quarter moon aspect to me is the idea that, there's so much emotional energy to move that forward, to process it, to take it to a new level.
Yeah.
Whatever that may mean.
And so in relating this next week coming up, if we are talking about, being individuated, conscious, nine-centered humans in this movement, things that could happen are that, to remember that anything that comes up is yours to deal with.
Yeah.
It is never anybody else's business or problem, even if it seems like it's coming from them. It is always about us. It is always about coming back into our strength of self, because when we have that ability to rely on our decision-making ability that lives within our body, we have that ability to rely on our witness consciousness to be able to see what is happening instead of getting hijacked and caught up into the scenario or the drama of the thing, to always come back to self. Always come back to what is my individual expression here, and following that body into the place and space that is proper or correct for you, but still allowing yourself to evolve. Instead of just showing up, this is my design, right? This is who I am. And using our design in relationships to, I have a feeling that could be something that comes up, using our design or who we think we are in relationships to prove or give credence to why we behave in a certain way, or why we haven't grown, or why we don't develop, or this is just me and accept it or not. And I think right now we are having the opportunity, not that we change our designs or our gates or any of those things, but they all operate on a spectrum. And so to be able to move from the frequency that is lower, dense, older into a frequency that is higher and more inclusive to everyone around you.
Mhm. Mhm.
In relationships, in that newness, in that whatever that came that you did not expect. Well, who am I within this, and where is my most evolved expression?
Well, and the line 2 of gate 8 says the highest good to serve selflessly.
Mm. Okay, so there's a couple of questions here. Let's start with nows. Regarding nine-centered relating, one of my favorite things about HD is that there is no man or woman in the body graph, but I've been learning to understand this bond better through HD. It's such a beautiful thing to see that the yang is within the yin and the yin is within the yang, and so once it's the in-breath and the out-breath. It's the expression and then the receiving, and then the expression and the receiving. And I feel like each of the gates of the hexagram, each of the lines of the hexagram in every single gate do that in-breath and out-breath. And it also lends, which I love, to this overall understanding that we are not either one, that it doesn't matter what we know, that it doesn't matter what we know, what we man, what we yang, if we don't allow the yin, the receivership, the experience, the frequency of change to enter our body, the human design doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So it's this divine marriage that I used to read about. I've studied the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Kabbalah, the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan and the Egyptian, and all of them say the same thing. All of them come back to this truth, that allowance of the in-breath and out-breath, allowance of the yin and the yang brings wisdom, that the full integration is the evolution of human consciousness. That's all we're doing, is getting what we know into lived experience. That's it. That's the only reason we're here. And that's, I feel like, the description that human design gives of the yin and the yang. And all of these ancient, beautiful cultures talk about this divine marriage. That then creates this divine child. Well, it's not a divine child, it's the him and the her creating self,
Mhm.
in my opinion. In my belief. I'd love to hear what you think about that now, since you brought that up. I'd love to hear what you have to say there.
Well, I was just admiring Richard's shirt as you were.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that there's always a seed of the yin and the yang, the yang and the yin. Yeah, that's the paradox that resolves itself.
It resolves itself every time.
Yeah.
It's something that attracted me to Richard, in his growth and development in this human design experiment and in his own evolution. He is not afraid to express the yin in this very yangness of his body. And something that I've experienced in my life is the judgment or prejudice or whatever that occurs because I'm just a woman, right? But I have this very man personality and very masculine expression of self. And so I've always felt androgynous and like I was being received in a very confusing way. But really it's the truth of us all, and I think our brave non-binary children are leading the way in this, push of the edge of what it means to be human, that we are not man, we are not woman, that we are just a beautiful divine combination of the both. And I think it's a measure of the patriarchy also crumbling a bit. Not that the matriarchy needs to come back, but that there will be a divine integration of both into something that is androgynous. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have bliss and excitement and direction and purpose, like we have collapsed the wave function of man and woman. Thanks for sharing. Okay, I think that's all that was alive in me about that. I was just waiting to see if more came. Rachel, it says, is it the same always returning to the self for projectors? How is it different if we are here for others or to see the other? This has always been a thing for me. Struggle and thing, HD, help clarify. What I read here is, as a self-projector, you are here for the other to see the other. And you are asking if it's the same, that it is about you to return back to self. And I think it still is the same. I mean, I'm not a self-projected projector.
She's a mental projector.
A mental projector. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. But I imagine it doesn't matter what our type or mechanics are, that we are here to evolve our consciousness into an understanding that knows that the choreography that we live within is designed in our favor. And how we see that is by coming back to self. I don't know, I'd love to hear maybe what you think and what you were, maybe I'm not getting the question right.
Well, I think being a projector in general is a little different when it comes to self versus other relativism in human design and also in our life experience. And I think that like human design actually gave me a lot of relief as an understanding point that I wasn't like just a hopeless codependent, a borderline personality, like, you know, a completely low boundaried, fucked up person, you know, as a projector. And I'm curious, I know Shango is a projector too. And it's like, because of the focus and absorbed aura, it's not just about other people. It's about systems. So it's about all kinds of stuff that is not so. But so, and I have no inner authority. And as a type, it's a really weird thing. And, you know, as a human design nut, to have no inner authority is also like a lot of the times the messaging doesn't apply to me. It's like that one weird caveat in the crowd that is like, you know, my sense of self is a lot less large than the rest of the people that I know in the experiment. And it's a lot less reliable. It's totally mental. It's just the 1156. And everybody's always like, you know, kind of vague on how the whole no inner authority thing works. And I've talked to a lot of mental projectors about it and actually gotten the most insight and clarity from them, because it is a weirder, it is a different type of existence, and it is a lot more other focused, even though it is a reference point of the self, but it's so much more flexible and diffused and less tangible. It's not in the body that it's consistent. And it's like, I feel like a lot of the times, it's just weird, you know, it's different. And all the things are in human design. So it's not like I'm having a huge problem with it, but like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure if any of the, if Shango is interested or able to talk about it as a projector herself. Or if anybody else here is a projector, to, you know what I'm, or if anybody has anything they want to say, I'm totally open.
I want to clarify maybe something and understand maybe you a little bit deeper. When you say when you say selfness, of course, selfness in the G center is about direction. It's about identity. And of course, our defined centers and gates and channels are all that, how we project our energy into the field, whether doesn't matter what our type is. Our open centers, how we meet the world, our defined things are how we are presented in the world, whether no matter what our aura type is. So I guess I'm not talking about sense of self as in direction and purpose. I think what I'm speaking of is the self inside, the inner child, the conditioned beliefs that get attacked or confronted in the world and in what's going on in our relationships we were just talking about. So when I'm talking about that self, I'm talking about the self in you that was glad that you had no more diagnoses. I'm talking about the self in you that doesn't identify with having a self. I'm talking about the codependent that looks out for the other. I'm talking about that self that has been created from experience and pain or bliss. That's the selfness that I'm talking about that we come back to in our relatings. Is that how you meant it?
Well, I'm not sure, but like all that you just said totally resonated and made sense to me as like it's I guess what it is, it's like for me, I feel like I have a harder time delineating what is not self and other self,
Mm-hmm.
right?
What's yours and not yours? Mm-hmm.
Or just like that, like there's like that my ability to be influenced, even though I have 0 fourth lines, I don't have a lot of influence ability on but I have a lot of ability to be influenced as a mental projector with all of like no inner authority. So it's like I feel more, but thank God I have the incarnation cross, the LAX of the individual, which like one of the things about it is like very hard to influence. It like influence actually backs away from it, is what it says in the I Ching or whatever. So it's just I feel like the whole like consistency of self for me is a lot weaker than most people, and so I guess it's just coming to peace with that as like a thing and trying to hone in really deeply. You know, I'm single definition, I only have the one channel, it's the ajna of the throat, the 1156. So I guess I'm just trying to like understand like what is the unequivocal self, if there is one, and even fucking matters, and if for me, you know, and if you know, and how can I like, because I do believe that doing your channel, doing your definition, all that stuff is a right move. It like vitalizes you, it like whatever. And I think because I have so much of the polarity of the opposite, I get easily pulled and distracted into the other thing. But maybe not, maybe no matter what, because I just have the one thing. I'm always like one note pony or whatever.
What are your insights?
Well, I'm thinking about as a mental projector, and so let me just maybe talk from type with my understanding of it. As a mental projector, we know that you have a defined ajna. That's the only thing that's consistent. You can have head to ajna, ajna to throat. So there's a couple different configurations, or you can have all 3 centers defined. But the main thing is, as we know, there's nothing defined below the throat. So it's putting so much emphasis on the ajna center. And the magnificence of the ajna center is this is the actual location of the design crystal. And the design crystal, as we also know, is what connects us to the genetic coding, to nature specifically. To me, when I think ajna, I think nature. Nature is infinitely mutative, symbiotic, and only knows growth. So the gift of a mental projector is you have more connection to the matrix than any other type, because that, even though we don't call it an inner authority, it is the most important center of your connection to source, which is nature, the universe, the whole yin yang back to the Big Bang. So, you know, as a lighthouse of guidance is what I see mental projectors, because of the degree of receptivity and your ability to feel things like no one else other than a reflector, which is a whole different thing, because of this gift of receptivity, but yet your awareness center's connection to everything is so unique and so powerful in that sense. So, I mean, I think that's where, again, when we think about gifts and superpowers, this is the superpower of the mental projector. Your design crystal in that sense is brought to the foreground more than other body graphs. the authority thing, I believe me, I empathize with this because I go through this with a lot of mental projectors in my classes. You all have been kind of left without a party bag in the human design books. He even said he wanted to spend more time on mental projectors and reflectors, and he simply didn't get there. Jenna Wablibin, my mentor, is doing a lot of work right now on this type, trying to reformulate the language. We don't use that term anymore in Human Design America. We don't say no, and we don't say
no inner authority.
We don't even use those words. He calls it an indirect echolocation authority. In other words, the reason for the soundboarding is so that you can simply have these conversations, and through the frequency, it comes back to your mind-body consciousness, which is your body. Your body is the temple.
That's
you do
self.
have a soul in the body. That is the self that I was thinking of while you were talking, is that every human being has a soul and a self in those higher self terms. So it's through this echolocation, through soundboarding, you're navigating like a bat does. You send out a signal, you speak to someone, is there recognition and appreciation coming back? And then that's what you move towards. It's simply navigating towards recognition. And what you're being recognized for is this deep awareness, this unbelievable, acute, natural ability to observe things like nobody else. So the superpower is like having who was the superhero that had the vision, could see through everything?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, that's kind of the vision you have. You have vision like we could never imagine. Your ability to connect dots in a matrix-like quality is unparalleled. So I just encourage, I guess, on the one hand, I hear this frustration. I hear from mental projectors, like, we didn't get the information, like no authority, outer authority only. Like that is so disempowering. And it's so sad because you're the lighthouse projector. You're the light that saves the lives of the seafarers in the night. Like this is what you bring to the planet. And all you're doing is orienting to who needs it. I'm talking, I'm echolocating. I'm talking, am I hearing it back? Am I getting a signal that it's safe to go that way? Knowing that by following that echolocation, you will arrive at recognition and appreciation and get to share these, again, immense gifts that no other type has. I mean, yeah, I think
I love, what I'm hearing to add is that gift that nobody else has is the gift of, surrender to the field, to your connection, your ajna connection to the field. Let it all come in. So let me see if I can marry this together. Let it all come in, and then the self, I mean, if we're talking about the self, that self is the one that identifies recognition and invitation and moves towards it. That self that I'm talking about to come back to, that we were talking about, that brought this question, that self to come back to is the one that hears the echolocation and is secure in its knowing that is the direction for it. What I'm saying is that self that hears that echolocation, and then the label of codependency or the label of bad, wrong, and shameful in whatever way comes upon your receivership of that energy. That's what I'm inviting you into, that self, the self that is either sure of its knowing and its ability to echolocate its correct guidance, or the one that receives and has these mechanisms. That's the conditioning. That's where I think you can, a mental projector can recognize what is the other and what is conditioning, is when it comes back into you and you have a knowing that you cannot follow through with because of whatever frequency came up when you had that knowing. So if that echolocation happens, you say what you're going to say, it comes back, and there might be recognition and invitation in the frequency that you feel in your body. And then you go, nope, that can't be right. I remember when I did that once, and my mom told me I was borderline personality, so I'm not going to say it. That's the self that is, when I was talking about this transit, that's the self that I was inviting us into being brave with. That one that says, okay, I know this, and this is me, and I hear this, and I feel this frequency, and then actually being involved in that, instead of calling yourself something and not doing it or not being there.
That was amazing, both of you. So beautiful. Thank you. That's a huge download. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Richard, what you were saying about the whole and both of you about how like our gift as mental projectors is the ability to respond to the field in this very like, I don't want to say objective necessarily, but it's like a very total type of way, is yeah, it is something that I struggle with as a person, but I do see its value to others. So yeah, thank you both very much for your insights. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for always echolocating, even if it's not the right time or place to be received or recognized. You know what I mean? You're always echolocating. And I think that's something valuable that you offer as kind of a role modeling for others, is that you are always echolocating. And it's okay if it's not the invitation or the recognition. That's what I want to empower, I think, is always that echolocation, regardless if you get, you know, knowing that your receivership, that coming back, that frequency that feels like receptivity, invitation, recognition is there as long as you keep doing it, and not believing or collapsing the wave function of how you're bad, wrong, and shameful if when you echolocated, you didn't get recognized.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, if I have problems. Okay. Yeah, the amount of times I've been recognized versus not are probably very slim. So yeah, I'm used to it for sure, to not being received.
Yeah. Hmm. I love these conversations when we don't have a pointed outline, but then they just go wherever they need to go. Hmm.
Well, we're ready to go somewhere. Where are we going?
I don't know. I'm feeling for what's alive relationally. What tools have I learned in the last week that I maybe want to share? Well, you guys got me in raw negativity yesterday. So I am evolving out loud. And so I guess the lesson that I've gotten this week in my relating with myself and the inside of myself and with relating with everyone else around me is this too shall pass. That's what I've taken, I think, from this week, is the remembering that even though I may feel uncomfortable, it will not last forever. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes my mind makes me think that it will. And makes me think that I must do something about it now to stop feeling this way.
Well, it's been, in my perspective, a very Cancerian week. It's a lot of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Easily,
Yeah.
little things just really, but he's very sensitive.
Nancy. Oh, I love this one. What is the 9-centered breakup or completion of relationship? I was actually thinking that this morning. I have a bunch of friends that are in a conscious community of conscious non-monogamy. and they come together and they go and they, you know, are together as beloveds and then have experiences with others in their nine-centeredness. You know, they follow the energy of their body into all of the experiences that they desire, while also continuing with one beloved, with communication, lots of understanding, things like that. And what I thought is, wow, how wonderful is it to be able to move in and out of whatever experience with whatever person. And then I wondered, what happens if, like, these two people that were telling me the story, what if this person falls in love with another person and goes on, like, and then they're beloveds in that life? And I thought, you know, playing the tape forward and being in this and seeing and watching this community, what happens is it's this moving apart in love. It's this, when we are consciously relating as individuals, there is nothing that is secret. There is nothing that is not exposed or shared with the other. So it's not as if I don't want to be with you anymore and the relationship ends. It feels as if what happens is just like the earth when the climate changes, it happens over time, progressively, and then all of a sudden we notice it's a desert outside. All of a sudden we notice those plants aren't there anymore. But it's not hard. It's not wrong. No one's shameful. It's just what is happening. It's just the movement of the climate from one thing to another. And I don't know for sure, but what I do know is that when there are things that I am not honest about, this is what creates that, you know, with myself and with the other. This is what breaks our nine-centeredness. And so I imagine that with pure honesty, my ex-husband and I were not in a conscious relationship, but we did what I call divorce in love, in that we both realized that we were going different ways. But in order to do that, in order to break our conditioning and our addictions that we had to each other and the games and things that we played with each other, we ended up meeting like every single week, talking about exactly what was going on until we could find a friendship, until we could find a love for one another, until we could go away in love instead of going away in hate and in anger and in pain. We both knew that that was really important. So I imagine that a nine-centered breakup or completion of the relationship, as long as there was complete honesty, that is something that might be encouraged from the other, you know, and uplifted. If I have told you this entire time, I, you know, have been in, I'm unhappy, or I want to move into another space, you're not unaware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you, in a nine-centered relating, ideally, eventually, you would support my desire to do different things. You would see my moving away, the desert coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're moving with our body's wisdom in the trajectory of our purpose, I don't think it's a breakup. I think it's a movement
Mm-hmm.
in love,
Mm-hmm.
with love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in theory that sounds great. I haven't always practiced that, right? But I think that that's what we're doing. We're pushing the edges. We're 6 lines in relationships. We're learning how to do this for all of us.
Yeah. And I think about that too, just speaking from a body graph, nine-centered relating. So when we think about the solar plexus, and remember, and I have to say this because it's so easy, because we look at our charts, we look at our definition, we have our opinions about openness and defined and all that. We get caught up in the mechanics, but it's important to remember that the role that each center has for us is the same. In other words, it's the essence of it, its viewpoint, its mission, its job. It's the same. Now, differentiation comes in based on defined and undefined. The mechanical execution of that center is different based on definition, but the essence of the center is the same. And so when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is built on the fundamentals of the formatting channel of maturation, a balanced development of beginnings, middles, and ends. And in relationships, whether or not who's defined solar plexus or not, this is what's going on. And so I think the breakup comes when the solar plexus is like, there's no more growth. If there's no more growth, the solar plexus is not interested in it. And so I think that's important to to think about. In other words, we come together to grow. We think it's because it feels good to be in love, which it certainly does, but we also know that we're attracted to the very people that are going to trigger our greatest wounds. It's just how the chemistry is designed. So we're attracted and fall in love with people that are going to hurt us the most. But with communication and nine-centered relating, we have tools and modalities to continue the growth and development. But when there is no more growth and development, that is when the solar plexus is finished. That is when something can close a cycle.
Right.
Mechanically, that's going to vary based on the two people and the charts and how that solar plexus is activated between the two charts. So you have to get into the nitty gritty of the mechanics. But I think when we say, okay, a nine-centered relating, when is it over? It's when there's no more growth.
And to know that, like now just said, so it's about evolution and movement, not commitment to a promise. We, as seven-centered beings, as five-centered beings, and then seven-centered beings, our mission as seven-centered beings was to collapse the wave function of how do we survive here? How do we thrive here? How do we be here? So we had, no one was bad or wrong or shameful, but we must, according to Gate 19 and 49, marry for safety, for security, for food, sex, and territory. We must come together for these things. Well, this movement from 1781 and this changing of the histidine codon and this moving away from this 1949 is breaking the need for those marriage bonds. It's saying that it is no longer time to come together for food, sex, and survival. It is actually now time to be individuated. It is now time to, it is not about commitment. Commitment is about homogenization and safety and security. It is not about that anymore. It is about evolution and personal individuated evolution of self. And so when we're committed to that, that is nine-centered relating. And when we both are committed to that, there is not a breakup. There is just movement, I believe. And we get to know now that we are just pushing the edges of what we have been taught about what security and safety and what that means, collapsing that wave function of I must stay alive, so I must get a partner because we can't do this alone. That's old and finished. And moving away with this break of 1949. And so I think that our desire to be in these committed, the concept of a breakup doesn't apply, because breaking up implies that we had to stay together, that we had this promise that no matter how you feel or how I feel, we must stay together so that we can stay alive. And that's no longer the case. We are moving into raves. And if I can talk even more about that, our human biology that is mutating to be aware. It's mutating for this solar plexus to gain awareness of beginnings, middles, and ends, of relating, of having human experiences with each other. So of course we have to break that addiction to having to be with the one, because we are moving into being more aware of the entire field and how we fit into all of it. And I think that that has nothing to do with marriage or commitment to anything but self.
Very nice.
Yeah. And if there's no definition of the solar plexus in composite, they still operate the exact same way.
Yeah, that wouldn't actually change it. But what we're talking about,
and everybody's different the way that we come together. And I don't even think that there could be even if we put a composite together and looked at it to see what a beginning, middle, and end would be, because that's the beauty of this whole thing, is that it's designed, but it's a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Like we don't have any choice about the design, but we have choice about perception, and that tells the story. Yeah. So I think it's all inviting us to be more in love with ourselves. And I know that sometimes it sounds really selfish, the things that come out of my mouth, but it is selfish, and it's supposed to, and it needs to be, because when I love me is the only way that I can purely, without manipulation, love you. To the depths that I can do that for me is the depths I can do it for you. And if I can't do it for me, I'm just pretending with you. I'm just being codependent and placating so that you can give me the love that I don't give myself. So yeah, I think loving myself is the best job I can do for everybody who loves me.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm loving this discussion. There are things I've been thinking about lately. I love that you address empowerment. Yeah, self-empowerment.
Well, and all that is tied together with Saturn in gate 22 right now,
Mm.
and it's in retrograde. And so,
Tell us more.
well, Saturn is about maturity and growth and development. So it fits well with the channel of maturation and the solar plexus.
Mhm.
And it also is about structure and stability based on the past, because we're moving opportunity to move towards maturity, but we're all building scaffolding, Saturnian scaffolding through our movement. So while it's in retrograde in 22, we are all having the opportunity to re-examine our individual emotional expression with others. So
Mhm.
it's a very timely group right now to be talking about these things while it's right there. So I think it's offering this opportunity to restructure emotional expression based on what you're describing. It's about self-love. And if we don't have enough of it, we can't expect someone to love us back.
Right.
But how that interplays through the frequency and the aura and the mechanics, there's a possibility of growth and development right now.
Absolutely. Gosh, I felt it.
Me too. In our little experiment over here.
Yeah, we are, you guys. We are experimenting. It is always sunshine and rainbows, but sometimes the rainbows come with clouds and a storm and such. And we are really this is truly an experiment, you guys. We really are doing this. We are really putting practices in place to help support each other. We are able now to see the inner child that comes out in him and the inner child that comes out in me. And we are working on very beautifully ways to be able to nurture those inner children between each other. And I think that's the beauty. And that's just why I want to move with like my ass is on fire towards this conscious relating, because it feels so accepting and so incredibly loving when I can look at you and say, I'm having an inner child, like I'm sad, I'm triggered, I'm feeling not enough. And instead of, well, what did I do to make you be that way? Or you got to go talk to somebody, or whatever that is, the experiences that I've had before about my emotional expression not being able to be held. In this nine-centered relating, we are continually remembering that it's not anyone's fault. There's no fault here. We are continually remembering that I have a mythology. I have some programs that are in there that are being brought to the surface. And he is just he is actually the gift, right? This is what I think nine-centered relating is. He is the gift that has been designed in my trajectory to be able to love me through my mythology. Let me give you the opposite. I've been in many relationships who are perfectly mythologically designed, but they did not hold me in my expression and traveling through the mythology of the trigger. It was just the wave that hit me in the face. And so this nine-centered relating feels like the gift we are all designed to get of symbiotic growth in relationship. Where I grow and am willing to is where he grows and is willing to, and where he grows and is willing to is where I'm inspired to also grow and be willing to do that. So it's just it's such a different relationship than I've ever experienced. And I believe that it is because of this individuation, because of this not expecting each other to have these not expecting the commitment, but feeling the natural emergence of the desire to commit. It's so backwards. It's so beautiful and interesting. Like you come into it with, okay, none of this homogenized bullshit. And then we find ourselves in gender roles and loving them. We find ourselves committed and loving that and wanting that. It's such a different frequency when it's expected versus when it arises as a natural consequence of our existence.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Hmm. Liz, thanks for being here. I didn't mention your name, but I wanted to call you in the circle. Thanks everybody for being here. Is there anything alive in anyone that you would like to bring to the circle before we go? Anyone? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. What you were talking about, both of you, has been so deep. Like, need to re-listen to it a couple of times.
Well, we're recording it. So great news is we'll put it on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kind of what I say. I'm sorry. I lost my track.
Hmm.
Well,
I want to invite Nancy. I did see that you had your microphone off earlier at the beginning, and so I wanted to invite you back to see if you wanted to share.
Oh, I was just gonna ask that kind of question because that's what I got asked by my students, and and there are so many different ways from the logical mind of me, the channel of concentration, to go into all kinds of details and keeping all that. And then I just thought, oh, when I was reading the I Ching of the at the gate of beginning, and I saw, oh, Neptune is not here for the exaltation of the first line, fifth line of the 53. So the word we're operating is this jumping off kind of vibration, which is not necessary for bad too. But then there, what you were talking about is this individuation. Yeah, it's just all start waving together, ring a bell. But the honesty was a word. Like if there is only one word I could offer to my students asking is like, am I honest with myself? What is this? Who am I really in this? Who have I become in this? Is this really the time? Because it's really hard for people to, like for people like my mind to go into all this mental rightness of this is the right timing, but then your body knows it's not, or your body already overpassed the timing. It's like there is the symptom too is people say overdue, like my no is overdue. What happens after you know becomes overdue? You procrastinated on the no. And then you lost the power to mutate. There's something about that was really cool. And I don't know how is that relating to the Neptune not existing at this generation, this moment for that exaltation of this beginning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what I hear you saying is right now, Neptune in its exaltation does not exist in the human collective.
Yes, that's what I read in the I Ching was saying, because Neptune goes through the gate 165 years. And then so the first line, fifth line, Neptune brought in exaltation. So now it's not in the exaltation, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just saying the world we are in is more immature, the cycle. But it doesn't mean it's bad, immature. It can also mean this is exactly what we need. I do my way, you do your way, and then I go with my diversity or individuality. So break up for individuality, I don't know. So that's something I'm curious, yeah.
Yeah, I think it just becomes movement, you know. I always come back to nature, you know, and the shamanic messages, right, that we get from nature. Nature's always showing us the way, and nothing in nature breaks up. It just moves, just changes form. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, this was a good one.
yeah, that was really enjoyable, you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being you.
Yeah. Sending you all love in this Cancer season. I'm feeling really mushy. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week.
Take care. Bye for now.